friends, welcome to the point. In today's session, let's discuss about the age of Mauryas. Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya is said to be the founder of Maurya dynasty, and according to Brahminical tradition, Chandragupta Maurya is said to be born of Mura to a Shudra woman in the court of Nandas. But according to Buddhist tradition, there was the existence of Kshatriya clan called Mauryas, and they were lying in the region of Gorakhpur adjoining the Nepalese Terai, and Chandragupta is said to be the member of this Kshatriya clan called Mauryas. Chandragupta Maurya, he took the advantage of growing weakness and unpopularity of Nandas during the last days of the rule of Nandas. With the help of Chanakya, who is also called as Kautilya, he overthrew the Nandas and established the Maurya dynasty. Justin, he was a Greek writer, and he says that Chandragupta overran the whole of India with an army of 6 lakhs. And this may be true or may not be true, but Chandragupta liberated northwestern India from thraldom of Seleucus, who ruled over the area of West Indies. So in the war with a Greek viceroy, that is Seleucus, Chandragupta seems to have emerged victorious. But peace was concluded between the two, that is Chandragupta and Seleucus, and in return for 500 elephants, Seleucus gave him eastern Afghanistan, Baluchistan and the area of west of Indus, and therefore Chandragupta built a vast empire which included Bihar and a good portions of Orissa and Bengal. It also included the western and northwestern India and the Deccan, leaving Kerala, Tamil Nadu and the parts of northeastern India. The Mauryas ruled over whole of the subcontinent, and in the northwest they held sway over certain areas, and those were not included even in the British Empire. Imperial Organization. The Mauryas organized a very elaborative system of organization, and we know about this elaborate system of administration from the account of Megasthenes, who was a Greek ambassador, and he was sent by Seleucus to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. Megasthenes, he lived in the Maurya capital of Pataliputra, and he wrote an account not only on the administration of the city of Pataliputra, but also he wrote about the Maurya empire as a whole. The account of Megasthenes, it does not survive in full, but quotations occurred in the works of several Greek writers, and these fragments it were collected and published in the form of a book, and this throws a valuable light on the administration, society and the economy of Maurya times. The account of Megasthenes, it can be supplemented by the Arthashastra of Kautilya. The Arthashastra, it was finally compiled a few centuries after the Maurya rule, and some of its books contains material that is genuine, and it gives a very authentic information about Maurya administration and economy. So on the basis of these two sources, that is written by Megasthenes, one who was sent by Seleucus, and the other account is Arthashastra of Kautilya. On the basis of these two sources, we can draw a picture of administrative system of Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya, he was evidently an autocrat who concentrated all power in his hands. According to Megasthenes, the king was assisted by a council whose members were noted for wisdom, and there is nothing to show that their advice was binding on the king, but from the councillors were chosen the high officers. The empire was divided into a number of provinces, and each province it was under a prince who was a scion of royal dynasty, and this province it was further divided into smaller units. So during the rule of Chandragupta Maurya, Pataliputra, Kausambi, Ujjain and Taxila, these were the important cities. The administration of Pataliputra, which is said to be the capital of Mauryas, it was carried by 6 committees, and each committee consisted of 5 members. These committees it were entrusted with sanitation, care of foreigners, registration of birth and death, regulation of weights and measures, and similar other functions. In addition to these officers, the central government maintained about 24 departments of the state which controlled social and economic activities. The most striking feature of Chandragupta's administration is the maintenance of huge army, and according to the account of a Roman writer called Pliny, Chandragupta maintained 6 lakhs foot soldiers, 30,000 cavalry and 9,000 elephants. Another source tells us that Mauryas maintained 8,000 chariots. So it seems that Mauryas also maintained a navy. The administration of the armed forces, according to Megasthenes, it was carried on by a board of 30 officers, which was divided into 6 committees, and each committee consisted of 5 members. It seems that 6 wings of the armed forces were the army, cavalry, elephants, chariots, navy and transport. These were each assigned to the care of a separate committee, which consisted of 5 members. The Mauryan military strength, it was almost the 3 times that of the Nandas. But how did Chandragupta Maurya manage to meet the expenses of such a huge army? So if we rely on Arthashastra of Kautilya, it would appear that the state controlled almost all the economic activities, and the state brought new land under cultivation with the help of cultivators and Sudra labourers. The virgin land which was open to cultivation, it yielded handsome income to the state in the form of revenue collected from the newly settled peasants. It seems that taxes collected from the peasants, it varied from 1/4 to 1/6 of the produce. So those who were provided with irrigation facilities by the state had to pay for it, and in addition to this, in times of emergencies, peasants were compelled to raise more crops. The state enjoyed a monopoly in mining, sale of liquor, manufacture of arms and so on, and this naturally brought money to royal exchequer. And due to all these reasons, Chandragupta was able to establish a well organized administrative system, and it gave a sound financial base to the Mauryan Empire. Ashoka. Chandragupta Maurya, he was succeeded by Bindusara. So the period of Bindusara is important for continued links with Greek princes. And later Bindusara was succeeded by his son Ashoka. He was the greatest of Maurya rulers, and according to a Buddhist tradition, Ashoka was so cruel in his life that he killed his 99 brothers to get to the throne. Since the statement is based on a legend, it may be also wrong. His biography of Ashoka, prepared by Buddhist writers, it was full of fiction that it cannot be taken very seriously. So it is possible to reconstruct the history of Ashoka on the basis of his inscriptions. So Ashoka is the first Indian king to speak directly to the people through his inscriptions, and those inscriptions were engraved on rocks on a polished stone pillars which is mounted by capitals and in the caves. So his edicts, that is Ashokan edicts, they are not only found in Indian subcontinent but they are also found in Kandahar in Afghanistan, and these inscriptions are in the form of 44 royal orders, and each royal order has several copies. The inscriptions were composed in Prakrit language and it was written in Brahmi script throughout the greater part of the empire, but in the northwestern part they appear in Kharosti script, and in Kandahar in Afghanistan they were written in Aramaic in Greek script and Greek language. These inscriptions were generally placed on ancient highways. So they throw a light on the career of Ashoka, his external and domestic policies, and the extent of his empire. Impact of Kalinga War. After Ashoka ascended the throne, Ashoka fought only one major war, and that war is called Kalinga War. According to him, 1 lakh people were killed in this war and 1,50,000 people were taken as prisoners. So this war, it brought to the Brahmana priest and the Buddhist monks great suffering, which caused Ashoka much grief and remorse, and that is the reason he abandoned the policy of physical occupation in favor of policy of cultural conquest. So in other words, we can say that Berigosha was replaced by Dhammagosha, and this was quoted in Ashokan edicts of 13th major rock edict. So when Ashoka had been consecrated 8 years, the beloved of the gods, the king Piyadasi, conquered Kalinga. 150,000 people were deported and 100,000 were killed, and many times that number perished, and afterwards now the Kalinga was annexed. The beloved of gods were earnestly practiced Dhamma. They desired Dhamma and they taught Dhamma. Dhamma means to uphold, and therefore it is central to Buddhist belief as it holds up the religion, and Buddhists may also believe that it upholds the natural order of the universe. Dhamma, it is based upon the actions and teachings of Buddha. Ashoka made an ideological appeal towards the tribal peoples and the frontier kingdoms. The subject of the independent states in Kalinga were asked to obey the king as their father and to repose confidence in him. The officials appointed by Ashoka were instructed to propagate this idea among all sections of the subject. The tribal people were asked to follow Dhammas. Ashoka did not treat foreign dominions as legitimate areas for military conquest. He tried to conquer them ideologically. He took steps for the welfare of men and animal in foreign lands, which was a new thing considering the condition of those days. He sent ambassadors of peace to Greek kingdoms in Western Asia and Greece, and all this can be said on the basis of Ashokan inscriptions. So if we rely on Buddhist tradition, it would appear that he sent missionaries to Sri Lanka and Central Asia. As an enlightened ruler, Ashoka tried to enlarge his area of political influence through propaganda. So Ashoka adopted a practical policy of consolidating his empire. He retained Kalinga after its conquest and incorporated it into his empire. So within the empire, Ashoka appointed a class of officers known as Rajukas, and these Rajukas, they were vested with the authority of not only rewarding people but also punishing them wherever necessary. The policy of Ashoka to consolidate the empire through Dharma bore fruit. The Kandahar inscription speaks of success of his policy with the hunters and fishermen who gave up killing animals and they possibly took to a settled agricultural life. Internal policy and Buddhism. Ashoka was converted to Buddhism as a result of Kalinga war, and according to tradition he became a monk. He made huge gifts to Buddhists. He undertook pilgrimage to Buddhist shrines. So the fact of visiting the Buddhist shrines is also suggested by Dharma Yatras, which was mentioned in his inscriptions. According to tradition, the Buddhist council was held under the chairmanship of Ashoka's brother, and missionaries were sent not only to South India but also to Sri Lanka, Burma and other countries to convert the people who were in those areas. Ashoka set a very high ideal for himself, and this was the deal of paternal kingship. He repeatedly asked his officials to tell the subjects that king looked upon their people as his children. As agents of the king, the officials were also asked to take care of people. Ashoka appointed Dharma Mahamatras for propagating Dharma among various social groups, including women. He also appointed Rajukas for the administration of justice in his empire. So the broad objective of Ashoka's Dharma was to preserve the social order, and it ordained the people should obey their parents, pay respect to Brahmanas and Buddhist monks, and show mercy to slaves and servants. These instructions can be found in both the Buddhist and Brahminical faiths. Ashoka taught people to live and let live. He emphasized compassion towards animals and proper behavior towards relatives. His teachings were meant to strengthen the institution of family and the existing social class. He held that if the people behaved well, they would attain heaven. Ashoka's place in history. It is said that Pacific policy of Ashoka, it ruined Mauryan Empire, but this is not true. On the contrary, Ashoka has a number of achievements to his credits. He was certainly the greatest missionary ruler in the history of ancient world. He worked with great zeal and devotion to his mission, and he achieved a lot both at home and abroad. Ashoka brought political unification of the country. He bound it further by Dharma, one language and practically one script called Brahmi script, which was used in most of his inscriptions. In unifying the country, he respected scripts like Brahmi, Kharosthi, Aramic and Greek scripts. He also accommodated such languages as Greek, Prakrit and Sanskrit and various religious sects. Ashoka followed a tolerant religious policy. He did not try to foist his Buddhist faith on his subjects. Ashoka was fired with zeal of missionary activities. He deputed officials in the far-flung parts of the empire. This helped the cause of administration, and it also promoted cultural contacts between developed Gangetic basin and the backward distinct provinces. Above all, Ashoka is important in history for his policy of peace, non-aggression and cultural conquest. Ashoka's policy, it did not make any lasting impression on his viceroys and vassals, who declared themselves independent in their respective areas after the retirement of the king, that is in 232 BC. And similarly, the policy could not convert his neighbors, who swooped on their northwestern frontier of his empire within 25 years of Ashoka's exit from the power. So this is all about Maurya dynasty. In the next session, let's discuss about the significance of Mauryan rule. Thank you.